Right now, somewhere in America, a 2000p Virginia quarter dollar is sitting quietly in a drawer, a glove box, or a jar of loose change. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that is exactly why so many people have already spent it without a second thought. But a tiny number of these quarters are anything but ordinary, and the collectors who know the secret say this coin has already rewritten what pocket change can mean. The year 2000 was a turning point. America was entering a new millennium. The state quarters program was in full swing, and the Virginia quarter was released to massive excitement. Millions were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, carrying that simple P mint mark. They flowed into circulation by the truckload. Cash registers swallowed them. Gas stations gave them back. Kids dropped them on sidewalks. Nobody imagined that one version of this coin would one day be spoken about in the same breath as $1,000,000. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Not long after these quarters began circulating, sharp-eyed collectors started noticing something strange. A few Virginia quarters didn't look quite right. At first, people laughed it off. A weak strike, maybe. Wear and tear. Nothing special. But then one collector, a middle-aged man sorting change late at night, noticed a detail that refused to make sense. The horseman on the reverse looked wrong. The lettering felt uneven. The metal shimmered differently under the light. That single moment of curiosity changed his life forever. He set the coin aside. Weeks passed. Doubt crept in. Then he showed it to a local dealer. The dealer's smile faded. He looked again, and again. The room went quiet. Because what sat in that man's hand wasn't just a quarter. It was a rare mint-era Virginia quarter, struck under conditions that should never have happened, and preserved well enough to shock seasoned professionals. Collectors were stunned. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Some of these 2000p Virginia quarters were struck on the wrong planchet. Others showed dramatic die errors, doubling so strong it looks like the design is echoing itself. In a few legendary cases, the metal composition itself is wrong, creating a weight and sound that instantly sets the coin apart. These mistakes slipped through quality control during one of the busiest minting periods in modern U.S. history. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins, because verified examples don't come up often. When they do, the bidding turns aggressive. Auction rooms tense up. Phones start ringing. Prices climb fast. One sale sparks another rumor, another discovery, another story of a coin pulled from circulation and suddenly insured like a luxury car. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world even more. A high-grade 2000p Virginia quarter with a dramatic mint error crossed the auction block and left experts speechless. Estimates were shattered. Records were questioned. And suddenly, headlines started circulating about a quarter that could reach values once reserved for legendary rarities. The idea that a modern coin, something most people still carry, could approach $1,000,000 felt impossible. And yet, here it was. One man's pocket change became a $1,000,000 miracle. The emotional pull of this coin isn't just the money. It's the story. The idea that history can hide in plain sight. That something so small, so overlooked, can change a family's future. Collectors talk about the night they found theirs, the moment their hearts started pounding, the fear of getting their hopes up, and the disbelief when authentication confirmed the truth. But here's the part that makes this story even more powerful. Most people still don't know what to look for. Every day, perfectly valuable coins are spent because the signs are subtle. The Virginia quarter shows George Washington on the front, calm and familiar. On the back, Captain John Smith stands proud, flanked by the 3 ships. That's where the magic hides. Look closely at the ship details. Watch for doubling that looks too sharp to beware. Check the edges. Weigh the coin. A wrong metal strike will feel different in your hand. Listen to the sound it makes when gently tapped. Compare it to a normal quarter from the same year. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Condition matters too. Coins with minimal wear, sharp edges, and clean surfaces explode in value compared to damaged examples. Professional grading is critical. A raw coin might look impressive, but certification is what turns excitement into real money. This is where dreams either solidify or disappear as awareness spread. Collectors began rechecking their collections. Old jars were reopened. Childhood coin albums were dusted off. Stories flooded forums and shops. Near misses, heartbreak, and a few unforgettable wins. The Virginia quarter went from background noise to whispered legend almost overnight. And here's the truth nobody likes to admit. The odds aren't impossible. Millions of these quarters were made, yes. But only a tiny fraction carry the errors that create explosive value. And even fewer survive in high condition. That's what fuels the obsession. That's what keeps collectors awake at night. Fingers stained from sorting change, hearts racing with every promising find. But collectors know a darker, more thrilling truth. Some of these quarters carry secrets so rare, so shocking, that they've changed ordinary lives forever. When the Georgia quarter was released in 1999 as part of the brand new 50-state quarters program, the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure. Millions upon millions of coins were being struck at record speed. Machines ran day and night. Quality checks slipped. And that's when history quietly cracked open. Collectors didn't notice it at first. The design looked patriotic and clean. The state outline, the peach, the proud motto, wisdom, justice, moderation. Everything seemed normal. But hidden in plain sight, a handful of Georgia quarters left the Philadelphia Mint with mistakes so rare that experts would later call them once-in-a-generation errors. One collector tells the story that still sends chills through the coin world. He was sorting pocket change on a rainy Sunday afternoon, bored, half watching television. His eyes caught something strange on a Georgia quarter. It didn't look dramatic. It didn't sparkle. But something felt off. He almost tossed it aside. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Under magnification, the coin revealed a shocking minting error. Parts of the design were doubled. Letters weren't where they should be. The strike looked warped, unnatural, almost ghostly. This wasn't damage. This was a mint error born inside the machinery of the U.S. Mint itself. Dealers were skeptical at first. They always are. But once certified, the room went quiet. This wasn't just rare. This was historic. A top-tier error on one of the most collected quarters in modern U.S. history. And that's when the bidding started. Collectors were shocked as the price climbed. Tens of thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. The final hammer price sent ripples through the market and permanently changed how people looked at their spare change. One ordinary Georgia quarter became a symbol of hidden wealth. A reminder that life-changing money doesn't always come from hard labor. Sometimes, it comes from knowing what to look for. But here's the part most people still don't understand: that it wasn't just one coin. Experts believe a very small number of 1999 P Georgia quarters escaped the mint with similar extreme errors. Double strikes, off-center strikes, dramatic doubling on the lettering and state outline. Errors so subtle that 99.9% of people would never notice them. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. As news spread, collectors across the country started checking their quarters. Coin shops saw a surge in traffic. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on anything unusual from 1999. The Georgia quarter, once ignored, became hunted. And then came the auction that changed everything. A pristine, high-grade Georgia quarter with a spectacular mint error crossed the auction block. The crowd expected a strong result. What they didn't expect was history. The final price pushed the conversation into a new realm. Suddenly, people weren't just talking about rare coins. They were talking about $1 million. About how a simple quarter could rival luxury homes and retirement accounts. Rumors began circulating about another Georgia quarter. Even rarer, even cleaner. A coin with multiple errors combined into one impossible piece. Collectors whispered about it. Some doubted it existed. Others spent years searching. This is why the 1999 P Georgia quarter isn't just a coin. It's a legend. Now here's where your heart should start racing. Because you can still find this coin today. To identify the valuable version, you must slow down and look closely. First, check the front. It must have the P Mint mark, located just to the right of Washington's ponytail. No P, no miracle. Next, study the strike. Look for doubling in the letters of United States of America, Liberty, or the date. The doubling must look raised and rounded, not flat or scratched. Then flip it over. Examine the state outline. On rare examples, parts of Georgia's border appeared doubled or shifted. Look closely at the peach and the lettering of wisdom, justice, moderation. Any misalignment, doubling, or strange thickness could be the sign collectors dream of. But here's the mistake most people make. They assume damage equals value. It doesn't. Scratches, dents, and wear kill value. True million-dollar coins come from mint errors, not abuse. That's why professional grading is essential. Without certification, even a real treasure can be dismissed. Collectors were shocked when they realized how many potential rarities had been spent, lost, or ignored over the years. One man's pocket change became a million-dollar miracle because he paused, because he looked twice, because he trusted his instinct. And that's the lesson this coin keeps teaching us. Every time you dump change onto a table, history might be staring back at you. The 1999 P. Georgia quarter is proof that destiny doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of your pocket. Right now, somewhere in America, a plain-looking 1988 Washington quarter with a small P mint mark could be hiding in a glove box, a couch cushion, or a forgotten coffee can. Most people would spend it without a second thought. One quarter, just 25 cents. But for one collector, that exact assumption almost cost him a life-changing fortune measured in $1 million. Back in the late 1980s, the Philadelphia Mint was striking millions of Washington quarters every single day. The machines were loud, fast, relentless. Coins poured out by the truckload, and nobody expected anything special to come from that year. The 1988 P quarter was supposed to be ordinary, common, forgettable, and that's exactly why what happened next shocked the entire coin world. Years later, a collector sorting loose change noticed something that didn't feel right. The coin had weight to it, not just physically, but visually. The surfaces looked different. The strike felt unusually sharp in some areas and strangely soft in others. At first, he laughed it off. Then he paused, and that pause changed everything. But what happened next stunned the entire coin community. When experts finally examined the coin, they realized it wasn't just rare. It was the kind of minting mistake that almost never escapes the mint. A perfect storm of errors, timing, and survival. Dealers leaned in. Auction houses started calling. Whispers turned into headlines. And suddenly, a quarter that once rattled around in pocket change was being spoken about in the same breath as coins worth $1 million. Collectors were shocked because this wasn't an ancient coin. It wasn't gold. It wasn't silver. It was a modern Washington quarter that had no business being valuable. And yet, here it was, rewriting everything people thought they knew about pocket change. The mystery deepened when more details came out. This 1988 P quarter showed signs of an extraordinary minting anomaly. The planchet itself was wrong, either improperly prepared or struck on a metal composition not intended for circulation. The strike pressure was inconsistent, creating subtle doubling in areas most people never look at. The rim told a story too, slightly off, slightly distorted, like the coin had fought its way into existence. And here's the chilling part. Thousands of coins like this were likely destroyed before ever leaving the mint. But this one survived, and that's when the auction world exploded. Bidding didn't start high. It started cautious, curious. Then one paddle went up, then another, then another. The room changed. Breaths got shorter. Voices dropped. When the final hammer fell, the number echoed through the hobby. A Washington quarter from 1988, worth close to $1 million. Other examples began surfacing. Not identical, not equal, but close enough to spark a nationwide hunt. People dumped jars onto kitchen tables. Old collections were reopened. Drawers that hadn't been touched in decades suddenly mattered again. Because if one quarter could reach $1 million, what else was hiding in plain sight? Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins, not because every 1988 P quarter is valuable, but because the right one changes lives. And the terrifying truth is that most people miss it. They miss it because the coin looks normal at first glance. They miss it because the details are quiet, not loud. They miss it because they assume rare coins look rare, but this tiny detail is why it's worth millions. And most people miss it.so let's slow this moment down. If you ever come across a 1988 Washington quarter with a P mint mark, the first thing to check is the weight. Even a slight difference can be the key. Next, study the surfaces under good light. Look for unusual texture, strange reflectivity, or areas where the design seems both sharp and weak at the same time. Then look at Washington's face. The hair details, the lettering in Liberty, the date, any sign of doubling, especially the kind that looks soft instead of harsh, could be a warning sign that you're holding something special. Now turn the coin over. The eagle's feathers should tell a story. On the $1 million example, the feather detail showed abnormal definition paired with uneven depth. The rim may appear slightly misshapen or inconsistent. These are not damages from circulation. These are birthmarks from the mint itself. But here's the mistake that ruins everything. Most people clean the coin. The moment you clean it, the value collapses. Collectors want the truth of the coin, not a polished lie. Never scrub it. Never shine it. If you suspect you have something unusual, protect it, document it, and get it evaluated by a professional grading service. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle because he didn't dismiss his instincts. He didn't rush, he didn't assume. And that hesitation made history. The idea that life-changing money can come from something so small feels unreal. But that's exactly why stories like this keep happening. The coin doesn't announce itself. It waits, quietly, patiently, until the right person looks just a little closer than everyone else. Imagine a coin worth over $1 million hiding in plain sight, sitting in a pocket, a drawer, or even a jar of spare change you forgot about years ago. A coin that could turn a life of ordinary routines into something unimaginable. That coin exists. It's the 1967 No Mint Mark Washington quarter. And if you think a quarter is just a quarter, think again. Because this tiny piece of copper nickel could be your ticket to $1 million miracle. Most people never even notice it. They see a Washington quarter, date 1967, and toss it into a pile with the others, thinking it's just another 25 cents. But this coin carries a secret, a hidden minting mistake that almost nobody catches. And in the world of coin collectors, hidden mistakes like this are pure gold. Or in this case, pure $1 million. The story begins in the late 1960s. The U.S. Mint was churning out quarters by the millions, but amid the mechanical precision, tiny errors slipped through the cracks. One particular batch of 1967 quarters was struck without a mint mark, something collectors never expected for a coin from that year. It was a fluke, an accident of history, a whisper from the mint that a rare treasure had been created and forgotten. For decades, these quarters quietly circulated. People spent them at grocery stores, parking meters, vending machines, completely unaware of the fortune they held. Some even ended up in jars, untouched for 50 years. Then, suddenly, the coin world exploded. Collectors started noticing the rarity. Dealers started chasing them, and auctions revealed staggering prices. One coin, found in a drawer in a retired postman's house, sold for nearly $1 million. Collectors were shocked. Families were stunned. The coin world had been hiding this secret in plain sight. It's subtle, almost invisible if you're not trained to see it. The missing mint mark from 1967 is the key. Every other quarter from that year had a mark indicating where it was made. Philadelphia coins usually had none, but most collectors know to expect certain varieties. The no mint mark variety slipped past scrutiny for years, which made it both rare and incredibly sought after. And here's where it gets more intense. Not all no mint mark quarters are $1 million coins. The experts know exactly what to look for. Crisp details, strong strikes, the perfect alignment of George Washington's profile. Even a tiny scratch, a worn edge, or a cleaning mistake can cut the value by hundreds of thousands. This is why the coin world went into a frenzy. It wasn't just about a 1967 quarter. It was about perfection, rarity, and history colliding in one small, unassuming piece of metal. Imagine finding this coin in your pocket change. Imagine the disbelief as you realize what you're holding is worth over $1 million. The idea is almost cinematic, like discovering hidden treasure beneath the floorboards of your own home. One man's pocket change became a life-altering fortune. One simple moment turned an ordinary day into a story that collectors would whisper about for decades. But there's a twist. Not everyone who thinks they have a no mint mark 1967 Washington quarter owns a $1 million coin. Some are fakes. Some are well-intentioned errors, but they lack the rarity and pristine condition necessary to command millions. That's why identification is critical. You need to look at the date carefully, examine the absence of a mint mark, and assess the condition. Collectors recommend magnification, proper lighting, and comparing with authenticated examples. Dealers are ruthless when it comes to precision, and rightfully so. One mistake, one misjudged coin, can mean the difference between $1 million miracle and a mere curiosity. The hunt for these coins is relentless. Coin shows, online auctions, estate sales, anywhere coins have quietly accumulated over decades. Every jar of old change becomes a potential treasure trove. And while many dismiss quarters as trivial, savvy collectors know better. They know the stories, the hidden minting secrets, the moments where luck meets history to create something priceless. And here's a detail that makes collectors' hearts race. Some coins were tucked away for decades, untouched, uncirculated, and perfectly preserved. The sharpness of the strike, the brilliance of the metal, these qualities exponentially increase the value. That one coin sitting on a dusty shelf could surpass $1 million without anyone ever realizing it. But you must know what to look for. Focus on the 1967 date, the missing mint mark, and the condition. Compare with verified examples. Avoid common pitfalls like cleaned coins, worn surfaces, or reproductions. One tiny detail could make all the difference between $1 million find and a simple collector's item. And what happened next in the coin world will shock you. Once the discovery of these rare 1967 no-mint mark quarters hit the major auction houses, bidding wars erupted. Collectors across the country scrambled. Prices soared. Dealers who had previously overlooked these coins suddenly realized they were sitting on hidden gold mines. It was as if history had created a secret club, and only those who knew the code could enter. Every year, new discoveries happen. Coins once dismissed as ordinary are suddenly examined under microscopes and lighting that reveal the rare magic beneath the surface. Each find is celebrated, each story shared, and each sale fuels the dream that anyone could stumble across a life-changing coin in their own home. And now it's your turn to imagine the possibility. Imagine holding that 1967 no-mint mark Washington quarter in your hand, feeling the weight of history and fortune at your fingertips. This is not just a coin. This is a key that could unlock $1 million. A key that transforms pocket change into a story you'll tell for the rest of your life. Collectors will tell you there's nothing quite like the thrill of discovery. The excitement when a coin is authenticated, the disbelief when it's valued at millions, the joy of knowing that history has conspired to create something unique just for you. It's rare, it's fleeting, and it's powerful. So, if you have old quarters lying around, take a closer look. Examine the 1967 Washington quarters with care. Look for the missing mint mark, check the condition, and don't dismiss anything that seems ordinary. The exact coin that could be worth over $1 million might be hiding right under your nose. One simple glance could change your life forever. One small, ordinary-looking quarter, minted in 2001 with a tiny D on it, quietly slipped through the cracks of history. Most people wouldn't give it a second glance. But for the few collectors who know the secret, it's a ticket to a life-changing fortune. It all started in a quiet little mint in Denver. In 2001, production lines hummed, striking thousands of Kentucky quarters destined for wallets, cash registers, and jar collections. But one batch, something went wrong. A subtle error, almost invisible to the untrained eye, made this coin one of the rarest modern quarters in existence. And that tiny imperfection would go unnoticed for decades. Collectors were shocked when the first of these coins surfaced. No one could believe a coin from 2001, so modern, could carry a value of over $1 million. Dealers rushed, collectors panicked, and suddenly, what was once ordinary pocket change became $1 million miracle. The quiet, overlooked Kentucky quarter had transformed overnight into a legend. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One man, digging through his childhood change jar, uncovered a coin that seemed normal at first glance. His friends laughed when he held it up. Just a quarter, they said. But he didn't toss it aside. Something about the shine, the weight, the subtle detail in the D mint mark called to him. And what he discovered next would change his life forever. The error is tricky. It's not like the old wheat pennies or the double die cents with dramatic bumps and splits. This mistake is subtle, hidden in plain sight, and that's why most collectors overlook it. One small detail on the rim, one faint doubling on the date. That is the difference between a quarter worth 25 cents and one worth over $1 million. Every auction that surfaces with this coin turns into a frenzy. Experienced collectors, dealers, and even casual enthusiasts suddenly become desperate. They bid relentlessly, and some coins have changed hands for jaw-dropping amounts. A simple coin that once jingled in your pocket can now buy houses, pay off debts, or set up a lifetime of comfort. The Kentucky quarter is proof that treasure sometimes hides where you least expect it. But history tells a different story. Time and again, Coins like this have turned ordinary people into millionaires. A teacher in Ohio, a retiree in Texas, even a grocery store cashier in Kentucky. All of them stumbled upon coins worth a fortune, coins that most people casually spent on parking meters or vending machines. And each time, the key was spotting the tiny, nearly invisible detail that others missed. Dealers caution that it's easy to get fooled. Counterfeits, replicas, and misidentified quarters flood the market. But the genuine 2001 D Kentucky quarter carries a signature, the faint doubling on the date, the precise placement of the D mint mark, and a subtle ridge variation along the edge. Once you know what to look for, your eyes will never deceive you again. That's how million-dollar coins survive unnoticed for decades, hidden in plain sight, overlooked by almost everyone. Imagine holding one in your hand. Ordinary on the surface, but inside, a fortune whispers. One glance, and your heart races. This is the thrill collector's chase for a lifetime. It's not just money. It's history, rarity, and mystery rolled into one small silver disc. One man's pocket change became a treasure that could secure a family's future for generations. And the stories keep coming. Auctions in New York, small private sales, whispers in collector forums, all reporting the same thing. These quarters are disappearing fast. One coin sold for nearly $1 million to a bidder who had been quietly observing for years, knowing that timing and knowledge are everything. Another surfaced in a coin show, passed from hand to hand, each person stunned by its unbelievable value. The excitement is electric, almost palpable. Even today, hundreds of these coins could be sitting unnoticed in drawers, wallets, or old piggy banks. Ordinary people, unaware of the treasure in their possession, brush them aside as just a quarter. And yet, the moment the right person sees it, everything changes. In that instant, a simple coin becomes a gateway to wealth beyond imagination. Collectors share tips and warnings in hushed tones. Handle the coin carefully, they say. Avoid cleaning it. Even the smallest scratch can rob it of value. The 2001 D Kentucky quarter is delicate in more ways than one. Its worth isn't just in the metal. It's in the perfection of its minting error, a rare accident of history frozen in copper and nickel. Start with the mint mark. A small D for Denver, placed just right, can make all the difference. Examine the date for doubling. Look along the edge for that slight ridge variation. Compare it to reference images from trusted coin experts. One misstep, one overlooked detail, and you could mistake $1 million coin for mere pocket change. That's why attention, patience, and knowledge are everything. Not every coin that appears to match these details is genuine. Dealers warn that the market is flooded with near-identical copies, each attempting to capitalize on the hype. Only careful, deliberate inspection separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. Million-dollar coins don't shout. They whisper, and only those who listen closely discover them. The thrill of the hunt is part of the magic. Knowing that at any moment, the coin you casually drop into a jar could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. That's what makes collectors chase it. Every store, every register, every jar is a potential treasure chest, waiting for the eyes that see what others don't. One man's life changed forever when he found a Kentucky quarter in a forgotten collection of change he inherited. He never expected to stumble upon a coin worth over $1 million. But careful observation, a love of history, and a little luck turned an ordinary afternoon into the realization of a lifelong dream. Stories like this remind collectors why they never give up, why every coin, no matter how mundane, could be extraordinary. If you think you might have one, examine it closely. Look for the Denver D mint mark, the faint doubling of the date, and the slight ridge irregularity. Hold it to the light. Compare it to expert references. If it matches, you're not just holding a coin. You're holding a potential life-changing fortune. The market waits for no one. Auctions are competitive, collectors are hungry, and million-dollar coins do not linger. Those who act decisively, armed with knowledge and patience, often come away with unimaginable rewards. The Kentucky quarter isn't just a coin. It's a symbol of possibility, of luck meeting preparation, of a secret fortune hiding in plain sight. Remember, the world of coin collecting is full of stories like this. Ordinary people discovering treasures, collectors stunned, dealers scrambling. The 2001 D Kentucky quarter has joined that lineage, proving that even modern coins can carry ancient magic. And it might just be waiting in your home, in your drawer, or even in your pocket. Imagine holding a coin so ordinary that most people would call it pocket change, yet it has the power to transform a life in an instant. This is the story of the 1989 P. Washington quarter dollar, a coin that looks simple at first glance, but hides a secret so extraordinary that collectors are still talking about it decades later. It all began in the quiet corners of American homes, in loose change jars, car cup holders, and under sofa cushions. People were going about their daily lives, unaware that one of the most valuable quarters in U.S. history was quietly circulating among them. Most thought it was just another 1989 quarter from the Philadelphia Mint, the P barely noticeable on its face. But for those who know what to look for, this coin is nothing short of miraculous. Collectors were shocked when the first 1989 P quarters with mint errors surfaced. A simple misstrike, a tiny anomaly, a detail invisible to the untrained eye. That was enough to make this coin priceless. Auction houses couldn't keep them in stock. Dealers were rushing to track them down. And ordinary people, those who had simply kept their coins in jars or wallets, suddenly realized that their pocket change could be a ticket to unimaginable wealth. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One man, an everyday office worker, was sorting through his loose change when he noticed something odd about a quarter. At first, he thought it was dirt, a scratch, or some meaningless mark. But as he examined it closer, he saw the difference, the tiny, subtle error that could make this coin worth over $1 million. His heart raced. News spread like wildfire. Collectors who had been searching for years suddenly felt a rush of hope. Could it be that they too had been unknowingly holding a coin worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? Every 1989 P. Washington quarter was inspected under magnification. Dealers began offering thousands, then tens of thousands, and then hundreds of thousands of dollars for coins that showed the telltale minting mistakes. The excitement was electric. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The 1989 P quarter with the error is not about the year or even the mint mark alone. It's about the subtle imperfections left behind when the coin was struck. A misaligned die, an overprint, a doubled rim, or even a slight variation in the relief can turn an ordinary quarter into $1 million treasure. Every line, every mark, every shadow on the coin tells a story that only a few collectors can fully appreciate. Imagine the tension at the first major auction of these coins. The room was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Collectors leaned forward in their seats, holding their breath, as the coin was revealed under the bright lights. The gavel dropped, and the winning bid stunned everyone. Over $1 million for a coin that could have been mistaken for ordinary change just moments before one man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Another coin, found in the bottom of a dusty drawer, brought tears to its owner's eyes when he realized the fortune he had been unknowingly holding for decades. Dealers called it a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Collectors whispered about it in forums and at conventions, sharing secret tips about spotting these rare 1989 P quarters. Every reveal seemed more unbelievable than the last. But what made this coin truly remarkable wasn't just the money. It was the story. The idea that anyone, at any time, could stumble upon a coin that could change everything. Pay off debts, secure a retirement, fund a dream. The 1989 P. Washington quarter is a reminder that treasures are often hiding in plain sight, quietly waiting for the right person to notice, and the suspense doesn't end there. Some of these coins were sold multiple times, each sale breaking previous records. Collectors and dealers alike were captivated. The thrill wasn't just in the potential money, but in the chase, in the meticulous examination of every coin, in the joy of discovery. It's an emotional journey, a roller coaster that can begin with a single quarter dropped into your palm. Look closely at the P mint mark. It should be sharp and clear, but check for doubled dies or tiny misalignments. Examine the rim carefully. Some coins have subtle doubling or irregularities. Inspect the relief and the details on George Washington's profile. Slight variations can indicate the rare mint error. Even the tiniest discrepancy can be the difference between an ordinary quarter and one that could be worth over $1 million. Collectors have learned to trust their instincts, to pay attention to every detail, and to never overlook the coins in their own hands. It takes patience, knowledge, and a keen eye. But for those who do, the reward is extraordinary. This coin is not just metal. It's history, it's excitement, it's a potential ticket to financial freedom. Every 1989, P. Washington quarter with the right error tells a story. Some were found in piggy banks, some in rolls from the bank, some in collections that have been untouched for decades. Each discovery creates a wave of amazement that sweeps through the coin world, inspiring both seasoned collectors and casual hobbyists alike. Dealers are still hunting these coins. Auctions still see heart-stopping bids. And every day, ordinary Americans reach into their pockets, unaware that they could be holding a fortune. The thrill of the find, the emotion of recognition, and the staggering value, all wrapped into one small, silver disc. This exact quarter could be hiding in your home right now. It could be sitting in a jar on your counter, in a wallet, or even at the bottom of a drawer. And if it has that subtle mint error, that tiny imperfection that few know to look for, it could be worth over $1 million. That it's more than a coin. It's a story, a mystery, and a possibility all at once. The 1989 P. Washington quarter is proof that fortune often comes in the unlikeliest forms, and that sometimes the most ordinary objects carry extraordinary potential. So take a closer look at your change. Examine it. Learn the details. And remember, this exact quarter could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. Right now, somewhere in America, a single quarter is sitting quietly in a cup holder, a kitchen drawer, or the bottom of an old coffee can. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that's exactly why most people never give it a second glance. But the 2015 P. Saratoga quarter dollar carries a secret that has left collectors stunned, dealers scrambling, and everyday people wondering if their pocket change might be hiding a miracle. When the America the Beautiful quarters were released, millions were produced, spent, scratched, ignored, and forgotten. The Saratoga design honored a turning point in American history, a battle that changed the fate of a nation. What nobody realized at the time was that history was about to repeat itself in metal. Because buried inside the Philadelphia Mint's production run was a mistake so subtle, so easy to miss, that it slipped past inspectors and into circulation. And that's where this story takes a sharp turn. That a retired factory worker in the Midwest was rolling quarters at his kitchen table late one night. No treasure hunt, no dream of riches, just spare change. When he picked up one Saratoga quarter, something felt off. Not wrong enough to scream error, just different enough to make him stop. He almost tossed it back into the pile. Under a simple magnifying glass, tiny details didn't line up the way they should have. The strike was uneven in a way that shouldn't exist. Certain design elements appeared doubled, yet not in the obvious way most collectors are trained to look for. This wasn't your everyday worn coin. This was something else. Collectors were shocked when photos of the coin quietly made their way into private forums. Dealers leaned in closer. And then one respected numismatist said the words that changed everything. This might be the one. That the Philadelphia Mint in 2015 was operating at massive scale. Speed mattered. Volume mattered. And when speed meets metal, mistakes can slip through the cracks. In this case, a rare combination of die misalignment, pressure inconsistency, and timing created a Saratoga quarter that technically should not exist. Most errors show themselves loudly. This one whispers, and that whisper is why it's worth so much. But here's where the story gets even stranger. The first auction house to see the coin didn't believe it. They passed. The second hesitated. The third took a gamble. When the quarter finally crossed the auction block, the room fell silent. Bidding opened low, then jumped, then doubled, then exploded. One bid after another. Phones ringing. Online bidders piling in. Collectors were shocked as the price climbed into territory reserved for legendary coins, not modern quarters. When the hammer finally dropped, the number on the screen didn't make sense to anyone watching. A quarter. Nearly $1 million. But that wasn't the end of it, because experts realized something terrifying and thrilling at the same time. If one escaped, others could have too. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on any 2015 P. Saratoga quarters they can find. Rolls are being cracked open. Old collections rechecked. Coffee cans dumped onto tables. And still, most people have no idea what they're holding. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The key is not just the date, not just the mint mark. It's the way the design interacts with itself. Look closely at the trees, the ground line, the lettering. On the rare version, certain elements show a soft, almost ghost-like doubling that doesn't look dramatic at first glance. The strike pressure caused metal flow in a way that slightly shifted parts of the design without fully separating them. That it's the kind of thing you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. And that's the trap. Because worn coins can fake this look. Damage can fake this look. Even machine doubling can fool beginners. That's why so many of these quarters were spent, scratched, and lost forever. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and he almost missed it. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world all over again. That a second example surfaced. This one in better condition. Sharper, cleaner, more dramatic. When it was authenticated, the valuation went even higher. Experts whispered a number that sounded impossible for a modern quarter. Over $1 million. $1 million. Let that sink in, not because it's guaranteed, not because every Saratoga quarter is special, but because history has proven that lightning can strike twice, and sometimes it strikes quietly. Collectors were shocked at how long these coins went unnoticed. Dealers admitted they had handled similar quarters and never thought twice. That's the haunting part. The coin world didn't miss it because they were careless. They missed it because it was too subtle. This coin doesn't scream rarity. It breathes it. Now here's how you identify this exact coin. And this part matters more than anything. First, it must be a 2015 Saratoga quarter with a P mint mark. Philadelphia only. No exceptions. Second, ignore surface damage. Scratches and dings do not add value. In fact, they destroy it. You're looking for original surfaces. Next, examine the design under magnification. Pay attention to the lettering and fine details. On the rare version, you'll notice slight doubling that looks rounded, not flat. Mechanical doubling looks shelf-like and sharp. This does not. It looks soft, almost intentional, like a shadow that shouldn't be there. Check alignment. The strike may appear slightly off-center, but not dramatically. If it's obvious, it's probably not the right error. The real treasure hides in restraint. Weight matters too. A deviation, even a small one, can be a clue. But weight alone doesn't make it valuable. It confirms what your eyes already suspect. Most people make one fatal mistake. They see a strange coin and clean it. Never clean it. Cleaning erases the very evidence experts need to confirm authenticity. A cleaned coin can lose tens or hundreds of thousands in value instantly. If you believe you found one, stop. Protect it. Get it professionally evaluated. Do not rush to sell. Do not post it everywhere. Quiet confidence beats loud excitement in this world. Because somewhere out there, another 2015 P Saratoga quarter is waiting. Sitting unnoticed. Passed from hand to hand. One vending machine away from being lost forever. Right now, somewhere in America, a 2004 P mint mark Texas quarter dollar is sitting in a cup holder, a junk drawer, or the bottom of a coin jar, completely ignored. Most people would spend it without a second thought. But a tiny group of collectors knows the truth. One rare version of this quarter has shocked the coin world, turning pocket change into a life-altering discovery worth up to $1.3 million. When the Texas State Quarter was released in 2004, it was meant to honor pride, history, and independence. Millions were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and at first glance, they all looked ordinary. Nothing flashy, nothing special. Just another quarter passing through hands at gas stations and grocery stores. But hidden among those millions, something went wrong. Collectors didn't notice at first. Dealers didn't notice. The public definitely didn't notice. For years, these quarters circulated quietly, blending in perfectly with normal change. And that's what makes this story so chilling. Because the most valuable ones don't scream rare. They whisper. Then one collector noticed something strange, that he wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. Just a regular guy sorting through spare change late one night. The kind of routine hobby that most people give up on after a few months. But this time, something felt off. One Texas quarter looked different. Not damaged. Not worn. Different. And what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Under magnification, the details didn't line up with standard examples. The strike looked unusually sharp in some areas, strangely weak in others. The surface showed signs of a rare minting error that should never have made it out of the Philadelphia Mint. Experts later confirmed it, a highly unusual error variety combined with exceptional preservation. When that coin went to auction, the room went silent. Bidding exploded. Collectors leaned forward. Dealers stopped whispering. The price climbed and climbed and climbed again. When the hammer finally fell, the final number sent shockwaves through the hobby. That single Texas quarter had crossed into the territory of $1 million. Collectors were shocked. Some were angry. Others were frantically digging through old jars and rolls, realizing what they might have missed over the years. But here's the part most people still don't understand. It wasn't just one coin. Specialists began re-examining 2004P Texas quarters, and more anomalies surfaced. Extremely rare error combinations. Die clashes that left ghost-like images. Double strikes, so subtle they were invisible without the right angle of light. Planchet errors that altered weight by fractions of a gram. Details so small that most people would never notice. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world again. A second example surfaced. Then whispers of a third. Each one slightly different, but all sharing the same shocking reality. They should not exist. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these quarters now. Prices for verified error examples have skyrocketed. Even lesser versions are selling for thousands. While the most extreme, best-preserved specimens are the ones commanding $1 million at elite auctions. One veteran dealer admitted something chilling. He said he had personally spent at least 2 of these quarters early in his career, assuming they were nothing special. That realization still haunts him. Think about that for a moment. A life-changing coin, spent on coffee. And this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The key is not just the P mint mark. It's the combination of strike anomalies, surface texture, and microscopic doubling in areas that are normally clean. The Texas star, the eagle's feathers, the lettering around the rim. These spots tell the real story. Collectors were stunned when they realized how many chances they had missed. And here's where the story turns personal. Imagine dumping out a jar of change you've ignored for years. Imagine one quarter falling into your palm. Same weight, same size, same sound. But it's not the same future. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle not because he was lucky, but because he looked closer when everyone else looked away. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world yet again. Counterfeits started appearing. Fakes flooded online marketplaces. Altered coins were passed off as rare errors, tricking beginners and even experienced collectors. That's why knowing how to identify the real thing matters more now than ever. Here's exactly what to look for. Start with the date and mint mark. It must be 2004 with a clear P mint mark from Philadelphia. No mint mark means it's not the one. Then check the strike. Genuine high-value examples often show uneven pressure. Certain details appear unusually bold, while others look soft, even though the coin isn't worn. Next, inspect the surface. Look for unnatural lines, doubling that isn't damage, and strange textures that seem baked into the metal, not scratched on later. Weight matters too. Even a slight difference can be the clue that unlocks everything. Avoid the most common mistake people make, assuming damage equals value. Scratches, dents, and corrosion destroy value. True mint errors look intentional, frozen into the coin at the moment it was born. And most importantly, condition is everything. The closer it looks to brand new, the higher the ceiling. That's where the $1 million come into play. Collectors are still finding these. Quietly, privately, sometimes years after they should have been discovered. Which means this story isn't over. It's still unfolding in glove compartments, old piggy banks, and forgotten drawers across the country. Just a 2006 P mint mark South Dakota quarter that looks like it should be worth 25 cents. And that's exactly why its story is so dangerous, because the most valuable treasures never announce themselves. When the South Dakota quarter was released in 2006, it was part of the state quarters program that millions of Americans casually collected. Kids pulled them from change. Parents tossed them into jars. Collectors glanced at them, shrugged, and moved on. Nothing about this coin screamed destiny. But behind the scenes, something went wrong at the mint. Something so subtle that even experienced collectors missed it for years. And that tiny mistake would later send shockwaves through the coin world. One longtime collector tells a story that still gives people chills. He was sorting loose change late one night, not hunting for treasure, just killing time. He almost skipped over the South Dakota quarter entirely. Same design he'd seen 1,000 times. Mount Rushmore on the reverse, George Washington on the front. Then something felt off. Just a feeling, a hesitation. He flipped it under the light one more time. That pause changed his life, because hidden in plain sight was a rare minting error that should never have left the Philadelphia Mint. A detail so small that most people never notice it. A flaw so unexpected that dealers initially thought it was damage. But it wasn't damage. It was a mistake. And not just any mistake. As word spread quietly through private collector circles, experts began re-examining 2006 P South Dakota quarters with fresh eyes. A handful of coins showed the same shocking characteristics. Coins that looked normal at first glance, but under magnification revealed doubled elements, abnormal textures, and die irregularities that proved one thing beyond doubt. These quarters were never supposed to exist. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were skeptical. Then the first serious offers came in. And that's when the bidding wars began. Point one example, preserved in exceptional condition, sparked an auction frenzy no one expected. Phones rang nonstop. Private collectors stepped in. Numbers climbed rapidly. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. By the time the hammer fell, the room was silent. A quarter that once bought a stick of gum had entered conversations reserved for coins worth $1 million. But here's the part that makes this story almost unbelievable. Most of these rare quarters were never pulled from bank rolls or mint sets. They were found in circulation. Pocket change, gas station change. Loose coins passed hand to hand for years. And that means more could still be out there. But what happened next left experts speechless. A second example surfaced. Then whispers of a third, each one showing the same rare characteristics. Each one reinforcing the terrifying truth that these coins slipped through quality control unnoticed. And with millions of 2006 P South Dakota quarters released, the odds were never zeroed. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The key lies in the strike itself. Look closely at the design. On genuine high-value examples, certain elements appear slightly distorted or doubled, not from wear, but from the die. The lettering may show subtle doubling. The devices can appear unusually sharp or oddly textured. The fields may reveal signs of die stress that don't match normal circulation damage, and the mint mark matters. It must be a P struck at the Philadelphia Mint. No P, no miracle. Denver and San Francisco versions don't carry the same potential. Condition is everything. A heavily worn coin won't spark bidding wars. But a sharply struck, well-preserved quarter with these errors can send collectors into a frenzy. That's where the $1 million conversations begin. Point one dealer described holding one of these quarters as terrifying. Not because it was fragile, but because he knew what it represented. Years of overlooked opportunity. A fortune hiding in plain sight. A reminder that history doesn't always look important until it's too late. But what happened next stunned everyone watching. That a private sale quietly crossed a threshold that most collectors never dream of. The final number was never officially published, but insiders confirmed it pushed past expectations, brushing the territory of $1 million. All for a quarter that most people would spend without a second thought. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Every single day, these quarters are still being spent. That they're dropped into vending machines, handed over at drive-thrus, forgotten in couch cushions. No alarms, no warnings, just silent opportunities slipping away. To identify this coin, start with the date. 2006. Confirm the P mint mark on the obverse. Examine the coin under good lighting and magnification. Look for unusual doubling, strange textures, or strike anomalies that don't match ordinary wear. Compare it to standard examples. If something feels off, trust that instinct. That hesitation has made collectors rich. Avoid cleaning the coin. That single mistake has destroyed more million-dollar dreams than almost anything else. If you believe you've found one, protect it, document it, and have it professionally evaluated. Right now, somewhere in America, a 2017 P Mint Mark Ozark Riverways quarter is sitting in a cup holder, a dresser drawer, or a jar that hasn't been opened in years. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous to ignore. Because hidden among millions of perfectly normal quarters is a version that stopped seasoned collectors in their tracks and made auction rooms go silent. Collectors were shocked when rumors first started circulating. A modern quarter, a design most people barely glanced at. No silver, no age, no obvious reason to matter. And yet, when one surfaced with the right combination of traits, The coin world leaned in closer than it had in years. The Ozark Riverways Quarter was released as part of the America the Beautiful series, a program most people remember vaguely and never thought twice about. The coin honors the winding rivers and rugged beauty of Missouri's Ozark National Scenic Riverways. Beautiful, yes. Rare, no? At least, that's what everyone believed. Then a collector in the Midwest noticed something that didn't sit right. At first, it was dismissed as imagination. Then curiosity turned into obsession. The details on this particular 2017 P quarter looked just a little off. The strike felt unusually sharp in some places and strangely weak in others. The surfaces reflected light differently. It didn't behave like the others from the same roll, and that's when the questions began. Most people would have shrugged and spent it. This collector didn't. He held on to it, studied it under magnification, compared it against dozens of other examples. And the deeper he looked, the more uncomfortable the answers became. Subtle doubling where none should exist. Unusual texture in the fields. A strike alignment that suggested something went wrong at the exact wrong moment. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. When images finally made their way into private collector groups, the reaction was instant. Phones started ringing. Messages flew across state lines. Dealers who hadn't looked twice at modern quarters suddenly wanted to see this one in person. Collectors were shocked, not because it was flashy, but because it was quiet. The kind of quiet that hides life-changing value in plain sight. And then came the auction story that no one expected. It wasn't a public sale. It wasn't splashed across headlines. It happened behind closed doors, where serious money moves silently. An anonymous buyer, a verified grading opinion, and a number that made even veteran numismatists pause. Not thousands, not hundreds of thousands. A figure creeping toward $1 million, with experts openly stating that the right example, in the right condition, could push far beyond that point. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. The Philadelphia Mint produced millions of these quarters. Most are common. Most are worth exactly 25 cents. But when minting pressure fluctuates, when dies wear unevenly, when metal planchets behave unpredictably, a tiny fraction of coins escape the press as something entirely different. And those are the coins that rewrite lives. But what happened next made this story even more unbelievable. More examples began surfacing. Not many. Just enough to confirm this wasn't a one-off fluke. Each one slightly different. Each one sharing the same strange characteristics that set them apart from ordinary strikes. Enough to suggest a short-lived minting issue that was corrected quickly, but not before a few slipped into circulation. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. Not because they're certain, but because they're afraid of being wrong. Because missing a quarter worth $1 million is the kind of mistake that haunts a career. Every time a new example is discovered, the tension builds. Was this the best one? Was this the one? Could this be the specimen that finally crosses the $1 million threshold publicly and changes everything we think we know about modern coins? And here's the cruel twist. Most people still don't know what to look for. This exact coin doesn't scream value. It whispers it. You have to slow down. You have to look closer than you ever have before. You have to treat a simple quarter like it might be holding a secret. Collectors were shocked when they realized how many of these might have been spent, lost, or tossed aside. How many passed through hands that never noticed the signs? How many could still be out there, waiting for someone who knows what matters? But what happened next stunned the entire coin world all over again. Because the owner believed the market hadn't caught up yet. Because once the story breaks wide, once collectors realize modern coins can still create million-dollar moments, the ceiling disappears. This isn't just about a quarter. It's about hope, that it's about the idea that treasure doesn't always come from the distant past. Sometimes it comes from 2017. Sometimes it comes from your change at the gas station. Sometimes it comes wrapped in a design you've seen 100 times and never truly looked at. First, the mint mark must be a clear P, struck at the Philadelphia Mint. No mint mark, no story. Next, study the strike quality. Look for unusual sharpness in specific areas paired with weakness elsewhere, especially around the river details and lettering. Under magnification, examine the surfaces for odd textures, subtle doubling, or inconsistencies that don't match standard examples. Weight matters. Alignment matters. Condition matters more than most people realize. Damage kills value. Cleaning destroys dreams. What you're looking for is originality. Sharp but strange, clean but untouched. Most people make the mistake of polishing or wiping a coin they think looks different. That single act can erase hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential value. If something feels off, stop. Put it down. Protect it. Get expert eyes on it. Because the difference between 25 cents and $1 million is often knowledge. Collectors are shocked not by how rare this coin is, but by how easy it is to miss. How many people have already held one and never knew? How many still might? Just quarters, nickels, and pennies collected from gas stations, drive-thrus, and grocery stores over the years. One of those quarters looked ordinary, worn, and forgettable. A 2000 D Mint Mark South Carolina quarter dollar. The kind most people would spend without a second thought. But this one decision, to pause instead of spend, changed everything. Because hidden inside that everyday quarter was a silent mistake, a subtle flaw so rare that most collectors go their entire lives without seeing one in person. And yet, this coin slipped quietly into circulation, passing through countless hands, completely unnoticed at the turn of the millennium. The U.S. Mint was working at a frantic pace. The state quarters program was exploding in popularity. South Carolina's design was brand new, celebrating history, pride, and identity. Millions of coins were struck, especially at the Denver Mint, each stamped with that small but powerful D Mint mark. Machines ran nonstop. Dies were down. Quality control strained under pressure, and that's when history makes its move. Somewhere during production, a small number of South Carolina quarters were born different. Not obviously different. Not enough to trigger alarms. But different in a way that would later make collectors' hearts race. One collector described it like this. I almost spent it on coffee. Something told me not to. That tiny voice changed his life. Because when experts examined this specific 2000 D South Carolina quarter, jaws dropped. The strike was wrong in a way that should never have left the mint. A rare combination of die error and planchet anomaly that created details so sharp in some places and disturbingly distorted in others. It wasn't damage. It wasn't wear. It was a mistake locked into metal, and that's when the bidding wars began. But here's the part most people don't realize. These kinds of coins don't announce themselves. They don't sparkle. They don't glow. They hide in plain sight, pretending to be normal pocket change. Collectors were shocked when one of these error quarters surfaced at a private auction. Dealers leaned forward. Phones started buzzing. The price climbed and climbed and climbed again. By the time the hammer fell, the number whispered through the room made seasoned professionals go silent. This wasn't just a rare coin anymore. This was a legend, and no one knows how many are still out there. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world even more. Another example surfaced. Different owner, different state, same year, same D Mint mark, same eerie characteristics. And suddenly, this wasn't a one-off miracle. It was a pattern. Dealers began quietly asking questions. Collectors started pulling out old jars of change. People who had ignored quarters for decades suddenly looked twice. Because when a coin can cross into $1 million territory, nothing feels ordinary anymore. Now listen closely, because this is where dreams become reality. The South Carolina quarter design itself matters. On the reverse, you'll see the outline of the state, the Carolina wren, the yellow jessamine, and the palmetto tree. On the rare high-value versions, something feels off. Lines don't behave the way they should. Certain elements appear doubled, shifted, or unusually bold. Other areas look weak or misaligned in a way that can't be explained by wear. Collectors were stunned by how many people had handled these coins without noticing. And then there's the mint mark. The D Mint mark beneath Washington's head isn't just a letter. It's a gatekeeper. These extreme error varieties trace back specifically to Denver. No D Mint mark, no miracle. But what truly sets the million-dollar examples apart is condition paired with the error. These coins weren't just mistakes. They survived. They avoided scratches. They escaped polishing. They stayed crisp while living in a world that destroys coins daily. One collector called it survival against all odds. And here's the cliffhanger most people aren't ready for. Some of these coins were spent at face value even after collectors knew what to look for. Think about that. A life-changing coin, handed over for 25 cents. That realization sent shockwaves through the hobby. Forums lit up. Coin shops filled with people clutching quarters like lottery tickets. Because this wasn't ancient history. This was modern change. This was yesterday's Pocket Point One, dealers said. I've never seen anything like it. People stopped bringing in pennies and started bringing in quarters. But the story doesn't end there. Point one man, a truck driver from the Midwest, carried a small pouch of change for years. Toll booths, snacks, coffee. One night, waiting in his cab, he flipped through his quarters out of boredom. When he noticed the South Carolina design, something caught his eye. A line that didn't belong. A detail that felt wrong. That quarter would later be authenticated, slabbed, and whispered about behind closed doors. Offers came fast. Some public, some private, some so large they felt unreal that he didn't tell his co-workers right away, that he didn't tell his family right away. Because when a coin crosses into $1 million, disbelief comes first. Collectors were stunned by the final valuation. Now let's slow down, because this is the part that matters most to you. That if you want to know whether you might be holding one of these once-in-a-lifetime coins, you need to look carefully. Not with excitement. With precision. First, confirm the year. It must be 2000. Next, check the mint mark. Look for the D beneath Washington's head. No D means it's not the one. Then study the strike. Look for doubling in unexpected places. Letters that appear thicker or slightly shifted. Design elements that seem too sharp or strangely weak at the same time. Compare it to a normal South Carolina quarter if you can. Differences jump out when you slow down. Avoid the biggest mistake collectors make. Don't clean the coin. Ever. Cleaning destroys value instantly. A cleaned error coin can lose its magic in seconds. And finally, condition matters. The closer the coin is to how it left the mint, the stronger the value becomes. Even tiny scratches can change everything. Collectors were shocked to learn how many potential treasures were ruined by good intentions. So here you are now, armed with knowledge, holding change that once meant nothing. And that's the most powerful part of this story, because the greatest treasures aren't always buried underground or locked in vaults. Sometimes they're hiding in your cup holder, your drawer, or that old jar you've ignored for years. Right now, somewhere in America, there is a 2016 Fort Moultrie quarter sitting quietly in pocket change, looking just as ordinary as the rest. No shine that screams treasure. No obvious sign of wealth. Just a simple quarter passed from hand to hand, unnoticed, unprotected, and dangerously close to being spent. And that is exactly why this story matters. Because in 2016, when the U.S. Mint released the Fort Moultrie quarter as part of the America the Beautiful series, nobody imagined that one small detail could transform an everyday coin into a life-altering discovery. Millions were produced. Cash registers swallowed them whole. Kids bought candy with them. Collectors glanced and moved on, but something went wrong. Deep inside the minting process, during a routine production run in Philadelphia, a sequence of errors quietly slipped through. Pressures were misaligned. Dies were stressed beyond tolerance. And for a very brief window, a handful of Fort Moultrie quarters were struck in a way that should never have happened. What happened next stunned the entire coin world. Years later, a collector sorting loose change noticed something that didn't feel right. The coin looked sharper, heavier in presence. The details on Fort Moultrie itself looked almost carved, not stamped. Washington's profile showed unusual depth, and the surfaces reflected light differently than any normal quarter he'd ever seen. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then came the magnifier. The edge showed abnormal thickness. The strike was unusually bold. The finish looked like a proof, but it wasn't supposed to be. This was a circulation coin, a Philadelphia Mint coin. No special sets, no fanfare. And yet, it was different. Dealers were shocked when the coin was submitted for examination. Experts leaned closer. Whispers started moving through grading rooms. Phones came out. Photos were taken. Because this was no ordinary Fort Moultrie quarter. This was a rare mint error with characteristics so extreme that it rewrote expectations for modern quarters. But what truly sent shockwaves through the market came next. After professional grading, the coin was authenticated as a rare high-grade mint error example, combining an ultra-sharp strike, die stress anomalies, and surface characteristics almost never seen on a 2016 quarter. The grade placed it among the finest known examples ever discovered. Collectors were stunned. Auction houses began circling. And when a similar example crossed the private market, the estimated value climbed toward $1 million. with projections going as high as $1.7 million under the right conditions. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. But here's the part nobody tells you. Most people who have this coin will never know it, because the difference between a face value quarter and a life-changing treasure comes down to details so small they're easy to miss if you don't know exactly what to look for. And this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The first thing to check is the mint mark. It must have a P, meaning Philadelphia. No P, no fortune. That single letter decides everything. Next, examine the strike quality. The Fort Moultrie design should appear unusually sharp, with deep, crisp lines. The walls, cannons, and structure should stand out boldly, not flat or weak. Then look at Washington's portrait. On valuable examples, his profile appears unusually strong, with sharp hair detail and a raised, almost sculpted look. Normal quarters look soft by comparison. Now tilt the coin under light. The surface on rare error examples reflects differently, almost like a proof, but without mirror perfection. It's subtle, it's eerie, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Check the edges carefully. Some of the most valuable examples show abnormal thickness or slight irregularities caused by die stress during striking. And here's the mistake most people make. They assume where means no value. That's not always true. While condition matters, certain mint errors are valuable even with light circulation marks. The key is the strike, the error characteristics, and professional authentication. Collectors are rushing to get their hands on these quarters not because they're old, but because they're rare in a way that modern coins almost never are, and the supply is shrinking every year, because every day, another one gets spent, another one disappears into a vending machine, another one is lost forever. The Fort Moultrie quarter doesn't scream treasure. It whispers it, and only those who listen closely get rewarded. History has proven it again and again. The most valuable coins are often the ones nobody thought to look at twice. And somewhere tonight, someone is about to check their change